We invite you to come along with us on our journey through ancient Israel's culture and language as we gather stones of insight, wisdom, and truth in order to repair the breach and restore the foundation of the path to dwell in on this walk with the Messiah. And now, foundation stones.
All right. Well, we'll say good morning, and I hope everybody's awake. If you're not, you're going to be in a few minutes. All right, everybody have a good night. This is where we participate. Did everybody have a good night last night? All right, okay. All right, up here talking to myself. All right, so over the last couple weeks, we have went over a couple different messages. Went from grace, we went to the word having no effect, and then last week we talked about the spiritual battle that's taking place in this nation is starting to become physical. And this week, God is going to push us a little further, and we're going to see what he's got to talk about. So how many knows that the Messiah said in Matthew chapter 7, he said that if you build your house on the rock, no matter the storms that come, you'll be able to stand, right? But if you build it on sinking sand, what's going to happen when the storms come? It's going to collapse, right? So if you will go to the book of Luke, and we're going to dig into Luke chapter 21. We're going to dig into something today. Luke chapter 21. It says, verse 8. Now, this is, if you don't know what this is, he's on the Mount of Olives. They have just left the temple, and the disciples have asked him, what shall be the signs of your coming in the end of the age? You can also read this in Matthew chapter 24. And he says this in verse 8. He says, take heed that no one deceive, that you be not deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. And the time draws near. Go ye not after them. The ISV puts it this way. He said, be careful that you're not deceived, because many will come in my name and say, I am. And the time has come. Don't follow them. Now, this part of the Messiah's prophecy has come to pass many times. But would everybody agree that there's been a whole bunch of people that's come along and said he's the Messiah? Would you agree that a bunch of people's come along and said, it's at hand? You know, we could go through the prophecies of why he's going to come in this year and why he's going to come in that year, and those years have all said and gone, okay? And he says, be careful not to be deceived. So what is he telling you not to be deceived about? And we're getting ready to go into this. And this is what I want everybody to understand. They come along and say he is the I am, and they're right. They're correct in that assessment. But we need to pay attention to his warning. Now, in Matthew 24, verse 5, you don't have to turn there. It gives us the exact same warning, except it adds something to it, and it tells us that we should not be deceived, but he's saying that people are going to come along, they're going to say, I'm the Messiah, and yet they're going to deceive many. So can I suggest that maybe it's the message that they're carrying along with that he's the Messiah that deceives many? Okay, I just lost everybody. Well, he's telling you to be careful of something. He's telling you not to be deceived by these people. And I believe he is referencing the signs surrounding his coming, because in the timing of the end of the age. Now, that's what this is all in reference to, is it not? Because they've asked him the question, what shall be the signs of your coming and of the end of the age? And he says, don't be deceived. There are many going to come in my name saying, I am the Messiah, not saying they are the Messiah. Now, I know there's been many that's come along and said, I'm Jesus and this and that. That's referenced a little further in the book of Matthew. But if you pay attention to what he's really saying is that many's going to come along and say, I'm the Christ, but they're still going to deceive many. And the only conclusion I can come to about the warning is that there's something to warn about. Would everybody agree? Okay. So could it be, I'm just going to ask these questions and you just mull it over as we go along, but could it be the message that they carry with them, not that he's the Messiah, but the message about the timing of everything? Could that be the deception? Could be. So could it be, and this is yet another question, could it be that they believe certain things are going to happen in such a way that people will maybe be snatched away, and that would deceive many? I'm just asking the question. So I want to investigate this. Verse 9, he says this. He says, but when you shall hear of wars and commotions, don't be terrified. For these things must first come to pass. But the end is not by and by. In other words, it's not soon at hand. Okay? Then he said unto them, nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines and pestilence and fearful sights, and great signs there shall be from heaven. Now, he just got through telling you these things are going to happen, but the end is not at hand. It's not by and by. These things must first come to pass. This is verified in Matthew chapter 24, verse 8, when he says, Matthew has these words, these are the beginning of sorrows. In other words, these are the beginning of labor pains. They are the beginning of birth pains. How many times do you know of ladies that when the pain starts, it takes a little while? Okay, because you'll have labor pains before the baby actually starts to come. Will everybody, all you ladies agree? Okay. So here in Luke it tells us, but before all this, verse 12, that's before the pains, they will lay their hands on you, persecute you. They're going to deliver you up to synagogues and to prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what you shall answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And you shall be betrayed, both by parents, brethren, and kinfolk, and friends, and some of you shall be put to death. In verse 10, he told us that many's going to be, in Matthew 24:10, he tells us that many will be offended. And because of that offense, it will cause the betrayal of family and friends and brethren. So what is the warning that the Messiah is trying to get across? So I'm going to make some suggestions here, and I'll probably make some folks irritated at me. But can I suggest that you have a message that a lot of people don't agree with? You've been taught a little differently than most of your brothers and sisters in the Messiah. Can I make that suggestion? Can I also suggest that there's a lot of people that are offended at what you believe? There are a lot of people that get mad at you because you don't do this or you don't eat that. and they say, oh, you're wrong. And they truly become offended when you tell them these things. Anybody? If you've been in this walk very long, you're going to find that most people will reject you, and they will turn their back on you, and they would just soon kick you in the teeth. Now, I mean, I hate to say that, but that's just the truth. Now, so we have people that simply don't agree with the message that you have, and the message of the gospel that Yeshua proclaimed, folks, is offensive to many. So offensive that we had a whole bunch of followers that were following along with the Messiah, and he come to this conclusion in John chapter 6 when he began to talk about, you're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood, and if you don't, you're not going to find everlasting life. Everybody remember that conversation? And many become offended and they quit following the Messiah, did they not? He turned around, the only ones that were left was the 12 apostles, right? And he said, are you going to leave me too? And they said, well, where are we going to go? You got the words of life. We've given up everything for you. My point is this, is that many walk this path, and as they walk the path, things begin to be shared with them that become offensive, and they'll turn their back and leave. If you think I'm wrong, look around. Even so much so, the hatred, it's amazing to me. I'll just talk for a second. It's amazing to me that I find more hatred among people that consider themselves Christian than I do around people that have never heard the gospel. I hear more flack from family and friends than I do anyone else. So it's no surprise to me that the Messiah says these people they will be so offended by you, they will start to betray you, they will literally turn you over to their leaders because they don't agree with the message that you carry. So you find yourself at odds with people that say they love you, but they don't love the message that you carry. Okay, so could that be part of the deception that the Messiah is warning about? Just another question. So now Yeshua tells his disciples something else here in Luke 21 that I want to focus on a little bit, and this is where I'm coming to. So he says in verse 17 through 19, he says, you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but there shall not a hair of your head perish. Well, now he's not talking about some of you not going to die. He's talking about nothing will be lost of you. He knows every hair that's on your head. Okay? Now, then he says this in verse 19, and this is what I'm going to focus on. In your patience possess you your souls. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but that statement jumps out to me. In my patience, I possess my soul. Interesting. You know, while I don't see that particular statement anywhere else in the Gospels, I find that concept all the way through the Scriptures. Because patience is a consistent theme. And I'll just say this, patience is so much of a consistent theme that God's still teaching me patience. I made the mistake and prayed for it 20 years ago, and I'm still reaping from that prayer. And Lord always reminds me when I get behind somebody that's really slow, he'll say, remember, patience, it's a virtue. But James chapter 1, verse 2 and 3, it says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptation, knowing that the trying of your faith works patience. So things happen in our lives to try our faith so that patience can come about. Romans chapter 5, verse 3, it says, and not only so, but we glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation works patience. Now think about that. Most of us don't like tribulations. We don't like stuff happening that we don't like. We just don't. I mean, most of us, if we don't have a perfect day, we'll go home, oh, this was bad, and this was bad, and this was wrong, and, this person cut me off on the road, and the people at work. I mean, we'll have a day. Anybody? Am I just the only one? So it's this trying of our patience, or trying of our faith. See, we think it's trying patience, but we're learning patience. And I'm going to tell you what the purpose of that is when we get through this. So James and Paul both tell us that patience comes through the trying of our faith. Now, according, we can keep your finger there in Luke 21, go over to Luke chapter 8. And I want to read this because according to the Scripture, it is the trying of your faith that brings forth patience that allows us to bring forth fruit. Chapter 8 of Luke, verse 11 through 15. And I'm backing up so that you understand the parable of this. He says, now the parable is this. The seed is the word of God. Those by the wayside are they that hear, and then comes the devil and takes away the word out of their hearts, lest they should believe and be saved. They that on the rock are they, which when they hear receive the word with joy. And these have no root, which for a while believe, and in the time of temptation fall away. Oh boy. So we got trials and temptations. In verse 14 it says this, and that which fell among the thorns are they, which when they heard the word they go forth and choked out with the cares and riches and pleasures of this life. Now listen to what he says, and bring no fruit to perfection. That is, to completion. Now, he doesn't say that there's no fruit on the tree. He says it's not brought forth to perfection. In other words, it ain't ripe. Anybody ever pick something off a tree that wasn't ripe and you bite into it? Oh my goodness. I've got a hold of some grapes that wasn't quite ripe, and they leave a nasty old taste in your mouth. But he says this in verse 15. He said, but that on good ground are they, which in an honest and good heart, having heard the word, keep it and bring forth fruit with patience. Now, I want everybody to understand that patience is a necessity in our lives. And according to Scriptures, we have to have a trying of our faith in order to bring forth patience that allows us to bring forth fruit. In other words, we have to have our faith tried so that it matures us to the point where we can produce fruit. Everybody with me? So the reason that the Messiah is telling everyone to be careful and not be deceived is because you have to be tried in the fire. I know it's not what we want, but Messiah said that he came to baptize with the Spirit and with fire. See, we always like to talk about the Spirit, but see, we still have to be baptized by fire. We have to be baptized by fire because that brings forth patience from us. And it's that patient endurance that produces the fruit. Because, see, trees don't produce in the first season. And if they do, it's not generally good fruit. They don't produce in the second season, and if they do, it's generally not good fruit. It takes at least 3 years to produce good fruit in a tree. So in other words, that tree has to endure a little bit before it starts to produce fruit. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 36, it tells us, for we have need of patience. And after you have done the will of God, that you might receive the promise. So now we need patience to bring forth fruit so that we can receive the promise. I'm going somewhere with all this, I promise. James and Paul tells us that we have to be patient so that we can receive the promise. And Messiah says, in our patience, we possess our souls. Now, the Greek word used for that possess is katomai, and it means to procure. So to procure something means to obtain something with a little bit of effort. In other words, it takes a little bit of effort to obtain the promise that you're after. Okay, so the Hebrew word there for possess is yarash, and it means to inherit. So in other words, you're not trying to earn the promise, you're trying to inherit the promise. Everybody with me? Because see, you can't earn anything. You're inheriting what God has given you. But you have to be in a position to inherit. Anybody ever had a last will and testament read to them, or a family member have left one? They have to be in, sometimes when children are left in that, many times children have to be to a certain age or a certain position before they can inherit what's been left. And if they don't, sometimes people will set it up to where they have to finish college, or they have to do this, or they have to do that, so that they can inherit what's being left. Everybody with me? So God is saying, I want you in this position in order to inherit the kingdom. And if you've not gotten to that position with a little bit of effort, then your fruit hasn't brought forth good fruit. Not saying you don't have fruit. It's saying it's not to completion. So it requires just a little bit from us. Now I'm going to take this just a smidge deeper. Let's go to Revelation chapter 13. Because see, what we're talking about here is the timing of his coming and the end of the age. Is that not what the question was? Now, if Luke 21 verse 19 was the only time that it was talked about that we possess our souls in our patience, then I wouldn't even pay attention to it. And as I said, it's a theme all the way through. In Revelation 13 verse 4 through 10, I'm going to read this. It says, and they worshiped the dragon which gave power to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who's likened to the beast? Who's able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given unto him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. If any man hath an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience of the saints. Notice the phrase, patience of the saints. Now, so in the book of Luke, we're talking about the things that's going to happen, and the Messiah is telling us we possess our soul in our patience. And in other words, we need to be patient so that we can inherit the promise. And here the Messiah is revealed to John that when the beast shows himself, he's going to begin by persecuting believers. He's going to make war with the saints. Now, I know there are teachings out there, there are ministers out there that believe that the church will not see the Antichrist. And I'm going to thoroughly disagree, because this is part of our patient building. We have to learn patience. Just because we live in America don't mean we get to escape everything. And here in the Western world, we think, well, we can't go through this. Well, I beg to differ, and I know there are people out there that would just argue up and down with me. But I beg to differ. Because what did Messiah say? Don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. And something's got to be deceptive about the message that they're carrying concerning this. So here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Why? Because it's going to pay dividends. Why? Because if you worship the beast, what's going to happen? You're lost. Now, for those that say, well, now this only affects the Jewish people. Yeah, I really got some issues with that, because then we need to start marking the Bible a little different, and we just need to sell the part of it to us Christians that it really pertains to. I mean, let's just do that. I mean, why would it call us saints? Well, next chapter, Revelation 14. I'm going to read verse 9 to verse 13. It says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man has worshipped the beast in his image and received the mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. Time out, time out, time out. Because now we are told, by and large, we are told that Antichrist being unleashed on the earth is part of the wrath of God. Now hold on just a minute. It says if you take this, you will endure the wrath of God. Everybody with me? See, when we read the scriptures, we got to be mindful to make precept upon precept, line upon line. Not make it sound like you want it to sound. If you don't like it, that's tough. This is the way God has laid it out. And this is the way that we have to walk it out. So, he says, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God in the faith of Messiah, Yeshua. And I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth, from this point forward. Yea, says the Spirit. Foundation Stones is a ministry outreach of His Gathering House. If you would like to know more about this ministry or other ministries associated with His Gathering House, or would like to support this ministry, please visit us at hisgatheringhouse.org or write us at His Gathering House, 2009 2nd Avenue, Phoenix City, Alabama, 36867.